I informed all the guests that the groom had been replaced, but my fiancée still doesn't know. She thinks she can keep it from me, secretly register her marriage with a poor scholarship student, and quietly give him a home. But she doesn't realize, I've already stepped aside generously. Not only did I send the wedding ring and the tuxedo to that poor student, I even replaced the photos at the wedding venue, with intimate pictures of the two of them. Yet on the wedding day, when she discovered that the real groom wasn't me, she broke down completely and tried to search the entire city for me, but by then, I had already disappeared from her world, for good. Chapter 1. Mr. Wang. Just to confirm, you mean the wedding will proceed as planned, but the groom will be replaced by someone else, is that correct? Facing the confused look of the planner, I nodded without the slightest hesitation. Yes, the wedding will take place as scheduled. 2 weeks from now. Any materials that need to be changed, I'll provide within the next few days. All right. Then, should I inform Miss Liu? No need. I interrupted instinctively, unable to suppress the emotion in my voice. Seeing her startled expression, I took a breath and explained as calmly as possible. She's quite busy. From now on, any matters concerning the wedding should be discussed with me only. This wedding was the last gift I would ever give to Willow, and since it's a gift, it should only be revealed at the final moment. That way, she'll get a surprise. Leaving the wedding agency, I walked to the roadside, unlocked my phone, and booked a ticket to leave City J. Just as the confirmation popped up, her call came through. I answered, but before I could speak, her soft, gentle voice floated through the receiver. George, my parents said they miss you. They asked me to bring you home tonight for dinner. They also said there's something they want to give you. Can you guess what it is? I didn't respond. The Lius have only one daughter, Willow Liu, the heiress groomed since childhood to inherit the family business. Her cold, proud temperament has never changed, but ironically, it was that same Willow who once gave all her gentleness to me. At least, that's what I always believed. Our mothers were best friends, and Willow and I grew up together. But happiness has never been something easily grasped. Barely a month after my mother passed away, my father rushed to marry that woman, and soon after, my new stepmother arranged for me to be kidnapped. I still remember that when I woke up from my coma, a man reeking of alcohol was taking the valuables from my body. Instinctively, I grabbed a bottle from the ground and smashed it against his head. He twitched a few times, then went completely still. The others turned on me, kicking and punching until I thought I'd die there. And then, it was her, Willow, who burst through the door with the police. At that moment, I remember her standing against the light, like a savior. From that day on, she became the only light in my life. I was left with deep psychological scars, terrified of touch, terrified of darkness, terrified of people getting close. She stayed by me every day, taking me to therapy, trying everything to make me smile again. It was she who pulled me, little by little, out of the abyss. Back then, I thought I'd already been careful enough, but before fully committing to her, I still wanted to confirm one last thing. I asked her, Willow, I can only accept love without any reservation. If you ever stop loving me, we can part peacefully, but if you betray me, I'll make sure you never find me again. She smiled, lifted her hand, and swore. George, I, Willow Liu, will only ever love you in this lifetime. I promise to always love you and treat you well. Time will prove every word I say, but now, time has proven everything. She couldn't give me that kind of love. She wanted to keep me, and yet she couldn't let go of another man. Just last night, in the pocket of the coat she took off, I found her marriage certificate, with Makoto. In that instant, I couldn't even breathe. Makoto. Of course I remembered him. The Liu family had sponsored quite a few poor scholarship students over the years. He was one of them. I remembered him not because he was outstanding, but because he was so good at pretending. I had seen it with my own eyes. How he once tried to pursue Willow, only to be rejected. Her voice back then was cold as ice. Sorry, I already have a boyfriend. I had always disdained Makoto's clingy little games. I knew exactly what kind of attitude Willow had toward him. She had always been straightforward, never one to beat around the bush. I'd even seen her reject him once, right in front of me. Sorry, I already have a boyfriend. At that time, I was thrilled for days. After all, the fact that she would publicly acknowledge me as her boyfriend felt like the highest form of validation. I always believed there was no possibility between her and Makoto, until about a month ago, when she suddenly brought him up. She said Makoto's mother was dying, and her last wish was to see her son in a suit, holding someone's hand and walking into marriage. Willow said she wanted to help fulfill that wish. She even asked for my opinion. The moment she did, I knew she had already wavered. I refused. Without hesitation, I reminded her, word by word, I can only accept love that is undivided. If you choose to share it with someone else, then this is where we end. Her face went pale. She gripped my hand nervously and said she would never betray me, never. And I believed her. Now that I think about it, how ridiculous. Not only did she secretly register her marriage with Makoto, she also gifted him a villa worth tens of millions. Even more absurd, they had already been living together, tangled up in each other. While I was still busy preparing our wedding, we were just 2 weeks away from the ceremony. I stared at the photo on their marriage certificate. Her calm, gentle smile made me sick to my stomach. Still, I was glad. At least I found out before the wedding. At least I could keep a shred of dignity. My phone suddenly rang. It was her. "George," she said, voice soft and sweet, as if nothing had happened. "My parents said they miss you. They want me to bring you home for dinner tonight. They said they have something for you. Can you guess what it is?" I didn't answer right away. Through the line, I could hear faint noises, the rustle of clothing, her uneven breathing, and another man's low voice. I didn't need to guess. I already knew what she was doing, but I didn't expose her. I forced my tone to stay calm. "I'm not home right now. Just go to the old house later. You don't need to pick me up." She still tried to keep up that gentle act. "When did you leave? Why didn't you tell me? I could have come with you." Ha! I go out the door. And you fall into another man's arms. Such a perfect division of labor. I stayed silent for a few seconds, then managed a weak smile. "I've prepared a surprise for you," I said. "I'm planning to give it to you on the wedding day. I just came from talking to the planner about some details." Her voice immediately turned excited, as if she genuinely expected a surprise. "What kind of surprise?" "If I told you now," I said softly, "then it wouldn't be a surprise anymore. You'll find out on the wedding day." Chapter 2. After hanging up, I didn't go straight to the Liu family's old house. I went home, or rather, back to the 300 square meter place that once belonged to us. This was the home Willow and I built together, brick by brick. Every detail carried traces of us, the painting she picked for the fireplace wall, the light tracks I installed beside the living room curtains. I used to think this place would be our forever, but the moment I saw her marriage certificate with Makoto last night, I knew it had all come to an end. Willow had already sent me the rings we were supposed to exchange at the wedding. Those matching diamond rings were designed by her own hand. I had watched her draw every line of the sketch. That day she sat in my lap like a child, explaining the design. "George, look, here I added a hidden slot. When the two rings fit together, they form a heart. We'll never be apart. Okay." Her eyes sparkled, as if she truly believed in forever. I forced those memories out of my head and refused to linger on them. Taking out the ring, I called the local courier. "Hello, I'd like to schedule a delivery. For the recipient's name, I wrote Makoto, since the groom at the wedding wouldn't be me. Then this ring, the one meant to symbolize that we'd never part, rightfully belonged to the new member of our we. I scheduled it to arrive at 9 a.m. on the morning of the wedding. Watching the courier leave, I finally felt like I could breathe again. But I knew, it still wasn't enough. The entire house was full of her shadows. Before leaving, I would erase her from this place, just as she had erased me from her heart. By the time I reached the Liu family's old house, my eyes were still faintly red at the corners. Mrs. Liu glanced toward the door, then looked back at me. "Why do you look so pale? Did Willow give you a hard time?" I smiled a little, trying to steady my voice, to keep myself from breaking down. "No, it's just windy outside." Got something in my eyes. As I spoke, I rubbed at them casually, wiping away the last trace of tears. "If she ever bullies you, you must tell me," Mrs. Liu said, patting my arm. "Willow may be busy, but that's no excuse not to treat you with care." My chest tightened, but all I could do was keep smiling and nodding. I didn't blame her. She'd been good to me after my mother died. Mrs. Liu had looked after me like family. She simply didn't know the truth. Not long after, Willow's car pulled into the underground garage, but she didn't come upstairs. Mrs. Liu asked me to go get her. I walked down to the garage, and immediately spotted her white sedan with its headlights still on. She was sitting in the driver's seat. The window was open. A slim cigarette between her fingers, unlit. Her gaze rested on her phone screen. I stopped a few steps away, and before I could say anything, I heard her sweet, teasing voice. "My back's still sore, it's all your fault." I froze, rooted to the spot. Makoto's low, gentle laugh came through the phone. "All right, it's my fault. Come over tonight, I'll give you a massage." Willow let out a soft, playful hum, her tone syrupy with affection. "Humph, you'd better. Not just my back, you'd better take good care of me." She hung up, a faint smile still lingering on her face. Then she finally lit the cigarette, took a slow drag, and leaned back in the seat, exhaling a long, lazy plume of smoke. That expression, I had never seen it before. So practiced, so free, so real. So this was who she really was. Willow, the woman I thought I knew, had long ceased to exist. In front of me, she never smoked or drank. She used to say she hated the smell of both. In front of me, she was always gentle, pure, untouched by the dust of the world. But now, the way she looked, she wasn't hiding, wasn't pretending, the woman I loved. Once she stopped loving me. She couldn't even be bothered to keep up the act. I stood there, my throat heavy as if filled with lead. The tenderness I thought belonged only to me, she could give it to someone else. Down to every tone and every gesture, without missing a beat, her coquettish voice still echoed in my ears. But that softness was no longer mine. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. But my stomach twisted violently, as though it were being wrung from the inside. The car engine shut off. Willow crushed out her cigarette, just before she opened the door. I turned and walked away from the garage. We went upstairs almost at the same time, her right after me. The servants were busy setting dishes on the table, one after another. Mrs. Lu saw us enter, and her tone turned sharp as she glared at Willow. What took you so long? George had to go down and call you up. Willow froze for a moment, as if suddenly realizing something, then turned to me abruptly. You went to find me. I looked at her calmly, voice light and even. Yeah, I saw you on the phone, didn't want to interrupt, so I came back. Why? Her eyes locked onto mine, tense and unblinking. I'd never seen her look so nervous before. Did you hear who I was talking to? The irony of it almost made me laugh, but outwardly, I didn't let a single emotion show. No, I said smoothly. Wasn't it a client? Who else could it be? I met her gaze with perfect ease. So calm it was almost convincing. Even to myself, her expression finally softened. And she slipped back into that familiar, gentle mask. She took my hand, tracing lazy circles on my palm with her fingertip. Her voice melting into sweetness. Not a client, she said softly. It was about the charity gala next week. I commissioned a set of couples accessories for us. The designer was just calling to confirm. When you're beside me, you'll always be the brightest one in the room, no matter what. As she spoke, all I could hear in my mind was her earlier line over the phone. My back's still sore. It's all your fault. Heh, she said it so naturally, so smoothly, that for a second, even I almost believed her. Charity gala. She used to organize many of those for me. The George Foundation. Donations for blessings. Prayer events. She didn't even believe in gods. Yet she'd prayed over and over again for me. I remembered all of it. Back then, I'd been moved to the point of speechlessness. But now, hearing her continue that same tender act, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. I simply replied, do whatever you think is best. After dinner, Mrs. Lu brought out a carved box, red Nanmu wood, clearly something special. This was meant to be passed down to the Lu family's daughter-in-law, she said warmly. But since your uncle and I only have Willow, it's something for the two of you. I opened the box. Inside lay a pair of jade pendants, intricately carved, the texture smooth and luminous, priceless heirlooms. Mrs. Lu smiled kindly at me, but I couldn't bring myself to return it. That piece of jade symbolized inheritance, marriage, union, and I felt nothing but heaviness. I forced a polite smile, closed the box, and set it back down. This gift is too valuable. I appreciate your kindness, Auntie. But something so meaningful should be worn on the wedding day. My tone wasn't cold, but it was firm enough. Mrs. Lu nodded, saying she would personally help us put them on that day. I noticed Willow glancing at her watch again and again, as if she couldn't wait for the dinner to be over. Sensing it, I took the initiative to excuse myself. As she walked me downstairs, she kept rubbing her waist lightly, looking as if it still hurt. I glanced at her and asked casually, "What's wrong? Your back hurts?" Her body froze for a second, and her hand slowly pulled away. "Occupational habit," she said with a faint smile, pretending it was nothing. "It's fine, don't worry." I didn't expose her lie, just nodded lightly, but inside, a bitter sort of irony rippled through me. When we got home, she acted perfectly natural, urging me to go to bed early. Her tone was gentle, soft, as if nothing had happened, as if we were still that couple, about to walk into the wedding hall together. But I knew, she wasn't worried about me resting. She just wanted me asleep, so I wouldn't interfere with her nightly appointment. I lay there with my eyes closed, but my mind had never been clearer. She lay down beside me, one arm wrapping lightly around my waist. At first, her movements were careful, tentative, as though she was afraid of waking me. But soon, her breathing grew heavier, and her grip on my waist tightened slightly. I knew what she was doing, testing me. I didn't move. I slowed my breathing, pretending to be fast asleep, just as she wanted. After a few minutes, Willow carefully got out of bed. The sound of her changing clothes was faint, but I heard every rustle, every motion. Once she was dressed, her footsteps, familiar and hurried, moved quickly toward the door. A few seconds later, I heard the soft click of it closing behind her. Only then did I slowly open my eyes. I got up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain open. Through the glass, I watched her car speed out of the gate. The night was thick as ink, and the taillights carved through it, 2 sharp streaks of red, mocking me with their glow. I stood there, my chest heavy, breath caught somewhere between anger and pain. Then I raised my fist and slammed it hard against the wall beside the window. It hurt, but not nearly as much as the fire burning in my chest. Chapter 3. When I woke up the next morning and sat up in bed, a delicious aroma drifted in from the kitchen. The living room was empty, but in the kitchen, a familiar figure moved gracefully among the counters. It was Willow. She was back. My hands clenched instinctively, but I forced myself to stay calm and walked out of the bedroom. Hearing the sound, she turned around and smiled at me, that kind of smile that made time seem gentle, full of quiet affection. "I learned a new recipe," she said softly, her eyes curving like crescents as she ladled the soup into a bowl. "Come and try it. Your stomach hasn't been well, and I heard this is good for digestion." I didn't move. I just stood there, watching her. After a long while, I finally sat down slowly. My gaze lingered on her. Everything looked so familiar, yet, somehow, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. "Where were you last night?" She froze for a moment, her smile stiffening before she quickly looked away. I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes, but she recovered fast. She walked over and sat beside me. She took my hand, her expression full of concern, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. "There was an urgent matter at the office last night," she said softly. "You were already asleep, so I didn't wake you." "What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" Her voice was gentle, tender, as if she were afraid I might slip back into the shadows of the past. I said nothing. I just stared at her. She kept comforting me with that same worried face, even picking up her phone to call her assistant, asking them to send over some medicine and schedule another therapy appointment for me. That scene, it was all too familiar. I used to believe she was the only light in my endless night. Back then, I could only fall asleep with the help of medication, and she would stay by my side. Sometimes she even slept on the floor, just so she could hold my hand the moment I woke up from a nightmare. I truly believed in her. But now, as her gentle hand rested over mine, I suddenly noticed the faint bluish mark just beneath her collar. She was dressed more modestly than usual, even her neck was tightly covered, but when she rolled up her sleeves while cooking, her disguise slipped. A blurred, intimate kiss mark trailed along the inside of her arm, and in that instant, I knew exactly where she had been last night. She had given her body to another man, and yet here she was, early in the morning, tenderly making me soup, comforting my insomnia, managing my life like nothing had happened. Even her lies were flawless, seamless, as if none of it were real. "Have some soup," she said, placing the bowl of sweet, nourishing broth before me. I looked into her eyes, full of false concern, then down at the bowl. My stomach churned violently. The smell alone made it hard to breathe. I suddenly shoved her hand away. The chair screeched harshly against the floor as I rushed into the bathroom. What surged up my throat wasn't just nausea, it was anger, humiliation, and something even deeper, unwillingness. Willow followed me, her face full of worry. When I stepped out of the bathroom, pale and shaken, she immediately reached out to wipe the water from my lips, but the moment her hand touched me, I instinctively pushed her away. "Don't touch me." Her hand froze midair, her eyes wide with disbelief and confusion. "George," her voice trembled, soft and uncertain. "Did I do something wrong?" I closed my eyes for a moment, forcing myself to swallow down the storm inside and speak calmly. "It's nothing," I said quietly. "I was just reading a novel. Maybe I unconsciously projected you into one of the characters." She finally let out a breath of relief, stepping closer to me with a gentle laugh as she wiped the moisture from my face. "Since when did you start reading novels? What's it about?" I looked straight into her eyes, my tone steady. "It's about a couple that everyone envied, but the woman couldn't stand the test of time. She changed, betrayed the men. She didn't want to give up the love she already had, but she also couldn't resist the thrill of something new. In the end, she lost both." "Willow, do you think you might ever become like her?" She froze. Her fingers trembled slightly before she suddenly wrapped her arms around me, pressing her head against my chest. "Novels aren't real," she murmured, her voice muffled. "No one can break us apart, and I'll never fall in love with anyone else. George, you have to believe in my love for you." I stayed silent. Her tone was firm, unwavering, but I couldn't tell if she was trying to reassure me or convince herself. In the days that followed, she hardly left my side. Even for hospital checkups, she insisted on taking me there personally. She became gentle, cautious, just like when we first got together. Every emotion was neatly tucked away, perfectly controlled. Time slipped by, and soon it was the day of the charity gala. Willow pulled me along to get a custom suit. I wasn't particularly interested. While she discussed fabrics, I sat to the side, flipping through a lookbook, until my eyes stopped on a dark ink-colored suit. Simple, clean cut, there was a quiet sharpness to it. It looked exactly like the person I wanted to become. She noticed my pause and asked softly, "You like this one? Try it on. If it fits, I'll have them send it home directly." I was about to agree when the clerk stepped forward, looking apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wong. This suit has already been reserved, but if you don't mind, I can recommend another style." Willow frowned, her expression cooling, her tone subtly changing. "Go ask the other customer if he'd be willing to give it up. I can offer him a new model for free." The clerk glanced at me, then leaned in to whisper something into her ear. He spoke quietly, but I still heard it. It was reserved by Mr. Ito. I looked at Willow, and the fleeting, complicated expression on her face almost made me laugh. She opened her mouth, but I spoke first. "It's just a suit. Do you really expect me to fight him for it?" She froze. "It's a nice design, sure," I said evenly, "but whether it's a person or a thing, I don't like taking what already belongs to someone else." Her brows twitched, her gaze unsteady. My words had landed right where they hurt. I didn't bother saying more. I turned, picked out another deep blue suit, and handed it to the clerk. She was silent for a few seconds before following me. In the fitting room, I took off my jacket. My phone screen lit up, countdown, 7 days. Chapter 4. Willow's gaze fell on the countdown notification glowing on my phone screen. Her brows furrowed instinctively. She reached out to take a closer look, but before her fingers could touch it, I stepped out from behind the dressing curtain. The moment the curtain drew open, she froze, as if something had just stunned her. I stood before her in the deep blue suit. Her eyes lit up instantly, wide and bright, staring at me as though she were seeing me for the first time. "George, you look amazing in this color," she said softly. There was pure admiration and affection in her eyes. Once upon a time, just one of her looks like that would have made my heart race uncontrollably. I'd spend the rest of the day floating on that feeling. But now, I felt nothing but calm stillness, like a lake with no ripples. I averted my gaze, ignored her compliment, and reached for my phone, ready to leave. She stood on tiptoe, trying to kiss me. I turned my head slightly, dodging her touch with a casual motion. "Let's go," I said evenly. "We're running out of time." She froze, her hand still half raised, and only then seemed to remember the message she'd glimpsed earlier. Her voice lowered a little. "I saw the countdown on your phone. 7 days left. What's that for?" I paused, a faint tremor rippling through my chest, but my face remained composed. 7 days later would be our wedding day, and also the day I planned to leave for good. I didn't want her to know yet that the surprise she'd see at the ceremony wasn't a gift, but the truth. Looking straight at her, I answered calmly, without a trace of hesitation. 7 days until the wedding. Did you forget?" Her eyes flickered, maybe guilt, maybe just an attempt to mask it, but she didn't press further. We arrived at the charity gala together. It hadn't officially begun, yet the venue was already bustling with noise and laughter. As soon as we stepped in, a crowd gathered around us. Willow turned to glance at me, lowering her voice. "George, if you don't like the noise, I can take you somewhere quieter." I said nothing, just followed her forward. One by one, people came over, raising glasses, exchanging greetings, offering smiles. Their words were all the same. How perfect we looked together. How devoted she was to me. "President Liu really dotes on Mr. Wong. You won't find another couple like you two in the whole city. Miss Liu's loyalty and love is admirable. Who wouldn't envy George Wong for marrying such a woman? When the wedding day comes, I'll bring a grand gift. May you two have 100 years of happiness." Standing there amid the sea of voices, I felt suffocated. Willow, though, was radiant. Her smile was soft, effortless, the kind that seemed to bloom straight from the heart. I knew she relished this kind of attention, this illusion of control that made her feel untouchable. Her smile was beautiful. I used to be mesmerized by it, but now, all I could see was irony. These people had finally found a way to get closer to her. Their flattery rolled off their tongues smoother each time, each compliment louder and more shameless than the last, as if a few sweet words in her presence could earn them a share of her favor. To me, though, their voices were nothing but a dull, relentless buzz. Every blessing, every compliment, they all sounded sharper than mockery. A restless irritation crept up inside me, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep it from spilling over. Willow noticed my mood shift. She quickly waved off the people crowding around us and led me to a quieter corner. But that moment of calm didn't last long. A familiar, and deeply unwelcome, figure appeared in front of me. Makoto. He wore a dark ink-colored suit, moving with that same self-satisfied composure, every step unhurried, as though he were the star of tonight's gala. "Miss Liu, Mr. Wong," he greeted smoothly, his lips curved in that polite, practiced smile. "Long time no see." Even through the veneer of courtesy, I could see what hid beneath it: smugness, provocation, and the faintest hint of mockery. The charity gala was hosted by the Liu family. As someone who'd once been sponsored by them, Makoto naturally had every right to be here, and with an upcoming speech scheduled, he was basking in his own spotlight. I didn't bother looking at him. I lowered my head and scrolled through my phone, treating him as though he didn't exist. But he took a step closer, his tone light, fake, laced with that annoying casualness. "Mr. Wong, are you still mad at me?" "I admit, what I did before was wrong. I owe you an apology. I was desperate back then. So I asked Miss Liu to pretend to marry me." He gave a theatrical sigh, then added, "But Miss Liu already turned me down, and now, I've got a girlfriend. So why don't we just let bygones be bygones?" "Huh?" His words sounded mild, almost friendly, but every sentence was a blade wrapped in velvet, slicing at me while he smiled. That wasn't an apology, it was a performance. Willow seemed to sense it too, the deliberate arrogance in his tone. Her brows knitted together, and her voice chilled. "Watch your mouth, Ito. George doesn't like you. Be smart and keep your distance." Makoto gave a derisive little laugh, brushing off her warning like it was nothing. "That's fine. He doesn't have to like me, as long as the person I like, likes me back." His gaze shifted, landing squarely on Willow, bold, suggestive. He even had the audacity to wink. I saw the flicker in Willow's eyes, the unease she couldn't quite hide. She quickly lifted a glass from the table and downed the wine in one gulp. I didn't want to watch any longer. The two of them, standing right there, exchanging looks, whispering in a silent language they thought I couldn't see, as if I were invisible. I stood up, face cold, and walked toward the restroom. Behind me, I heard Willow's chair scrape back. She must have tried to follow, but before she could take more than a few steps, someone intercepted her. A group of guests had surrounded Makoto, showering him with flattery as if they'd just discovered the next rising star. "Mr. Ito, that suit looks incredible on you. And the earring, so elegant." Makoto tilted his chin proudly. "Of course, my girlfriend gave it to me. Everything she picks is the best." Someone suddenly noticed, voice rising in mock surprise. "Wait, that earring, it looks just like the jade from Mr. Wong's ring. Don't tell me your girlfriend and Miss Liu bought theirs from the same piece of jade." I froze mid-step. Slowly, I looked down at the ring on my finger, the smooth jade band shining faintly under the light. It was the one Willow had designed herself. She told me the two rings formed a heart when joined together, a hidden groove connecting them into one perfect shape. She'd said it meant we would never be apart, and I had believed her. I had treated that promise like a sacred vow. Now, the jade's cool surface pressed into my palm like a cruel reminder that the heart we shared had always been broken. I slid the ring off my finger, closing my fist tightly around it. The rounded edge of the stone bit into my skin, sharp, steady, until the pain spread through my hand, numbing everything else. Chapter 5. I had barely been in the restroom for 2 minutes when a familiar ringtone rang out from the hallway. Just one chime, then it was cut short, answered immediately. And then, clear as day, I heard Willow's voice, low and hurried. "Meet me at the little garden." A moment later came the sharp rhythm of her heels striking the marble floor, quick, deliberate, fading gradually into the distance. I closed my eyes, and a cold, bitter smile tugged at my lips. She never changed. She always acted faster than she spoke. I knew this place better than anyone. The little garden, the hidden paths, the quiet corners, I could walk them blindfolded. Instead of taking the main corridor, I slipped into the storage room at the far end. There, behind a stack of boxes, was a tall glass window. The window itself couldn't be opened, but the narrow gap was enough to give me a clear view of the outside. Just as I expected, she appeared within minutes. Her steps were hurried, her face glowing with anticipation. Waiting for her there was Makoto, eager, restless, like a puppet barely holding himself back. The moment he saw her, he pulled her straight into his arms, and she didn't resist, not at all. She melted into him, arms wrapping around his waist, pressing herself so close it looked like she wanted to merge into his bones. My hand, hidden behind the window frame, trembled slightly. Then I heard her voice, that soft, teasing tone she used only when she felt safe, when she thought no one was watching. "Stop teasing me. The doctor said I'm getting weak from exhaustion." I almost laughed. Exhaustion. Of course, that night when she never came home, I believed she was stuck at work, entertaining clients. But now I knew the truth. She wasn't working, she was being drained. I thought back to that night after she returned from the Liu family estate, her body marked with faint bruises, claiming she just had a sore back, wearing clothes buttoned all the way up to her neck. Now the truth had graciously revealed itself. No more pretending, no more guessing. Makoto tilted her chin up, forcing her to look at him. Without hesitation, she rose on tiptoe and kissed him, deep, hungry, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Their bodies pressed together, mouths locked. The wet sound of their kiss echoed in the quiet night, loud enough to make my skin crawl. I don't remember what my face looked like then. Maybe blank, maybe frozen, maybe so full of rage my blood had turned to ice. I watched as Makoto bit her lip. She frowned in pain but didn't pull away. Not until a trace of blood appeared did she finally shove him off and scold him under her breath. "Are you crazy? I told you, don't leave marks where people can see. George would be upset." I almost laughed again. How considerate of her, still thinking about my feelings. Makoto only smirked, unfazed, sliding a hand up her back and squeezing playfully. Just make up some excuse. He won't suspect a thing. His voice dropped lower, rough with amusement. I like you like this. Come over tonight. I've got something new for you to try. He whispered something else into her ear, and whatever it was, her lips parted slightly. Her gaze darkened with heat. The next moment, she grabbed his collar and kissed him again, and I just stood there, watching, through that narrow slit in the glass, as my future bride tangled herself around another man. She had told me she loved only me. She had sworn that in this lifetime, she'd marry no one else. She had once knelt before me, sketching the design of our rings by hand, saying she wanted them to symbolize a promise that we would never part. Not in this lifetime, but she had given the other half of that heart to someone else. Leaning against the window frame, I clenched my hand so tightly that my knuckles turned pale, trembling from the tension. Something inside my stomach twisted violently. I nearly lost my balance. By the time I stepped out of the storage room, Willow had already separated from Makoto. She looked perfectly composed, as though nothing had happened, scanning the crowd in search of me. When she spotted me, she hurried over, a faint sheen of sweat glistening on her forehead. Where did you go? I turned around and you were gone. I was so worried. She really was a good actress. I looked at her, my gaze deliberately settling on the corner of her lips. The spot where he had bitten her was still red, the blood not yet wiped clean. I took a walk in the garden, I said evenly, my tone calm to the point of mockery. Got some fresh air. Then, casually, I added, what happened to your lip? The instant I asked, her body stiffened. A flicker of panic crossed her face, and tiny beads of cold sweat appeared along her hairline. I didn't say another word, just watched her reaction, waiting to see what kind of excuse she'd come up with this time. Which garden did you go to? She asked, voice unsteady. I let out a faint, humorless chuckle, turning slightly so she couldn't see my expression. The one behind the hall. Lots of people there. Why? Are you that nervous? Can't I take a few steps on my own? Her shoulders visibly relaxed, relief washing over her features as if she'd just stepped back from the edge of hell. It's nothing, she said softly. I just didn't want you to get lost. Her eyes darted away. As always, a tell she never managed to hide. I didn't bother responding. My gaze drifted to the main stage instead. That bastard, Makoto, stood there under the spotlight, giving his speech, talking about how the Liu family had once sponsored him, how their kindness was as deep as the mountains, repeating Willow's name again and again. Each time he said it, his eyes flicked toward us. I didn't need to guess what he'd say next. Beside me, Willow's eyes were fixed on him too. Her expression was complicated, guilt and longing twisting together in the same glance. I saw her bite her lip, or maybe she was just remembering his bite, because the moment she did, pain flashed across her face. I remembered exactly how that wound had been made, and yet, she still hadn't thought of how to explain it to me. Then, as though realizing I was still waiting for an answer, she mumbled, I've been a little overheated lately. Got a blister near my lip and accidentally scraped it. What a clumsy lie. I laughed under my breath, cold, humorless, and didn't bother exposing her. I'm tired. I'm going home. I turned away without waiting for her reaction. I didn't want to see that panicked look on her face again. She hurried after me, her grip tight around my wrist, almost desperate. Wait, I'll tell my parents, we'll go together. In the end, she took me back to the old Liu family estate. She said her mother wanted us to stay for the night, a final gathering before the wedding. I didn't refuse, but after washing up and lying down, I felt like I was sinking into a deep, silent well. My body was exhausted, yet sleep refused to come. Leaning against the pillow, I half closed my eyes, listening to the faint tapping of her fingers on her phone screen. Then came a soft laugh, low, throaty, and unmistakably flirtatious, the kind of laugh a woman only makes when she's speaking to her lover. I kept my eyes shut, forcing myself not to imagine who she was texting, what they were saying, or what secret little game they were playing. I don't know how much time passed before she gently shook me awake. George, she whispered, kissing my cheek lightly. Mom wants to talk to me for a bit. I'll be right back. If you wake up, just call me. Okay. I murmured an turning over as if half asleep. The door closed softly behind her. Her footsteps faded down the hallway, toward the study. I waited until silence returned, then sat up. From down the hall, faintly, I could hear the soft rhythm of two pairs of footsteps, hers and her mother's, heading toward the study. I got up, barefoot, and quietly walked to the door. The floor was cold beneath my feet, each step light and soundless as I made my way down the hallway toward the study. The door wasn't fully closed, a thin strip of light slipped through the crack. Then I heard it, Liu mother's voice, low, controlled, trembling with anger. I've told you so many times, Willow, George is a good man. Since you've already chosen to be with him, then keep those filthy men away from you. Her tone sharpened. Makoto, of all people, how can you still be entangled with him? Do you even realize the whole social circle is laughing at you? I froze. Even my breath stopped midway. So that was it. They knew. They'd all known. Willow and Makoto, their affair wasn't a secret. Lou mother knew. And not just her, the people in their glittering, well-bred circle knew too. All this time, it was only me, the fool, faithfully clutching the illusion of love and loyalty, guarding a lie as if it were something sacred. When those people smiled at us, saying, "You two are perfect together, and may you be happy forever," were their lips trembling with suppressed laughter? My hand groped for the wall to steady myself. My fingertips were ice cold. Lou mother's scolding went on. Words sharp and endless, but I couldn't make them out anymore. A low, constant ringing filled my ears, drowning everything else. It was like being pushed underwater, lungs burning, air thinning, unable to breathe. I turned away, moving mechanically, stumbling my way back down the corridor until I reached the bedroom. Falling onto the bed, I curled up beneath the blanket, shaking. Only one thought kept echoing in my mind, over and over. So even sincerity can be faked, and love can be, too. Chapter 6. When I returned to the bedroom, I felt hollow, like my soul had slipped out of my body, leaving behind only a shell. My mind drifted in and out, and before long, I sank into a heavy, dreamless sleep. Somewhere in that half-conscious haze, I sensed Willow come back. She sat by the bed for a long time, watching me. Her gaze was hot, the same kind of gaze I used to give her when she was asleep, when I still believed I was the luckiest man in the world. Only now, I knew that beneath that warmth, there was no longer love, only guilt, fear, and calculation. Her phone rang a few times. At first, she ignored it, but the ringing grew sharper, more urgent, stabbing through the quiet room like needles. After a few seconds of hesitation, she finally stood up. I could hear her breathing, shallow, conflicted, then the soft rustle of her clothes as she turned and walked out. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't ask where she was going. I already knew. Chapter 7. When I woke the next morning, the other side of the bed was empty. At breakfast, Lou mother personally brought a tray over to me, her smile gentle, her tone maternal, the perfect picture of care. "Willow said there's an urgent matter at work," she said kindly. "She had to leave early. You should stay and keep your uncle company, play a few rounds of chess. It's not good for you to stay alone all the time." Her voice was calm, natural, her expression flawless. If I hadn't overheard their conversation last night, I might have believed her again, might have mistaken that polished performance for genuine concern. But now, I could only see her the way I saw Willow, a woman who could lie with a smile and make it sound like love. I smiled faintly, my tone polite, steady. "There are still some wedding details I need to confirm with the planner. We've been preparing for months. I don't want any mistakes. I'll visit Uncle another day." She nodded, not pressing further. I knew what she was thinking, perhaps relief, perhaps expectation, but I didn't care to guess anymore. After breakfast, I left without delay and went straight to the wedding planning company. I hadn't lied, there was something to handle. Last week, I had already instructed them to replace the groom's name, from mine to Makoto's. I'd told them I would deliver the rest of the required materials myself. In the past few days, Willow had been glued to my side, almost never giving me a moment alone. But she had forgotten, she'd built her life around me. Her passwords, her phone, her computer, they were all my birthday. She thought I trusted her too much to look. She thought I was too naive to doubt. But during one of her showers, barely 10 minutes, I had opened every secret she ever kept from me. Their marriage certificate, their honeymoon photos, their intimate pictures, in matching wedding attire, arms wrapped around each other. Every single one. Her business trip had been a lie. She'd spent half a month abroad with him. Now, all of those photos were sitting safely in my phone, and one by one, I was sending them to the wedding planner, replacing my role with his. When it was done, I didn't feel the devastation I expected, just a hollow calm, the kind that comes after the storm, when there's nothing left to break. As I stepped out of the company, I remembered a medical exam I'd taken a while ago. The results should have been ready by now. I decided to stop by the hospital to pick them up, but as soon as I parked, I saw her car, Willow's. A dull thud echoed in my chest. I started walking toward the building, my pace quickening, and then, before I even reached the reception desk, I saw them, at the end of the corridor, standing outside the obstetrics and gynecology department. Willow and Makoto, they were laughing softly, standing so close their bodies nearly touched. His hand rested protectively on her lower back, gentle, careful, as though she were something precious, fragile, and his alone. I stood frozen where I was. My throat felt parched, as if all the air in the corridor had been sucked away. Willow was smiling, that familiar, soft, practiced smile, the corners of her eyes curved with warmth, her every gesture dripping with affection. Makoto leaned down to whisper something in her ear, and her smile deepened, sweeter, brighter. So this was her real face. When she finally noticed me, her whole body stiffened. She jerked her hand away from Makoto's, panic flashing across her face. A sheen of sweat broke across her forehead. "George, what are you doing here?" I looked straight at her, my voice so low it almost frightened me. "Came to pick up my medical report." I didn't look at her again, only at Makoto. That smug, composed mask he wore so well. Willow hurried forward, grabbing my arm, her tone flustered, words tumbling over one another. I got into a minor car accident this morning. Makoto happened to be passing by and brought me here." She hesitated, eyes darting nervously before she added the sentence that nearly made my lungs collapse. "After the checkup, I found out I'm pregnant." "George, aren't you happy?" I almost laughed. A car accident, and somehow, it produced a child. "How could I not be?" I said softly, my tone so gentle it didn't even sound like me. Makoto met my eyes with that infuriating calmness, his voice light, his expression tender, though I knew exactly who that tenderness was meant for. "Mr. Wong probably doesn't know yet," he said slowly, almost kindly. "Miss Liu is carrying twins, over 2 months along now." He spoke each word like he was reading a sentence, a verdict. My chest felt hollow. Empty laughter bubbled up inside me, silent but merciless. Then the doctor came hurrying out behind them, oblivious to the tension that thickened the air like fog. He glanced between us, clearly unsure who was who, and began speaking matter-of-factly. "She's still in the early stages, no intercourse for now. After 3 months, you can consider it again. Whoever's her husband, make sure she rests. There's been some light bleeding, so please be careful." That one word, husband, sliced through the air like glass. Willow went pale, beads of sweat rolling down her temple. Her hand shook as she grabbed mine, dragging me out of the hospital before I could say a word. I didn't resist. I didn't speak. I just let her lead me, like a puppet, hollow and weightless. Once we were outside and the noise faded, she finally let out a small sigh of relief, forcing a smile as if nothing had happened. "It's probably just because I've been tired lately," she said lightly. "I'll take better care of myself. George, don't worry." I tried to smile back, but nothing came out. She knew exactly why she was bleeding, and so did I, but I didn't bother exposing her anymore. I had told her before, if she ever betrayed me, I would disappear from her life forever, and I meant it. But before I vanished, I had a final wedding gift prepared, one she would never forget. On the drive back, her phone kept lighting up. Each time, she'd glance at me nervously, waiting until I turned my head before unlocking it quickly. It was a message from Makoto. "Makoto, Willow, what do you think we should name the babies? Come over later, we can decide together." Her fingers froze, her face tightened. Then she quickly typed a reply. "Willow, we'll talk about names later. Don't say things like that again when George is around. If he ever finds out the babies aren't his, you don't want to know what will happen." I saw the message reflected faintly on the window, caught by the corner of my eye, and all I felt was amusement. No anger, no heartbreak, just a quiet, cutting irony. She loved the children, that much I knew. I just hadn't expected them to be his. Then, my phone buzzed. A new notification. "Makoto Ito has sent you a friend request." For a moment, I stared at it, my thumb hovering above the screen. I shouldn't have accepted, but after a brief pause, I did. Not even 2 seconds after I accepted, his message appeared. "Makoto, George, I don't believe you're really that oblivious. The children Willow's carrying, they're not yours." Straightforward, cruel, but nothing I didn't already know. I didn't reply. He must have been impatient, because more messages followed in quick succession. "Makoto, she and I are married, here's the certificate." It was the same photo I'd already seen on Willow's phone. Now, seeing it again, I felt nothing, just a dull emptiness. "Makoto, so what if you two have a wedding? I'm her husband. As long as I don't agree to a divorce, you'll always be beneath me." "Makoto, she spends time with me every day. She's wild in bed, maybe you're just not man enough for her." "Makoto, she's told a lot of people about us. You really think they envy you? They're laughing at you behind your back." "Makoto, remember the suit I wore at the charity gala? She designed that for me. You can't imagine how much she loves me." "Makoto, if you two hadn't grown up together, you'd never even be qualified to stand beside her." Then came the photos, intimate, explicit, sent one after another, like bullets in slow motion. I just stared at them, expressionless. How ridiculous. He thought flaunting his victory would make me crumble. He thought possession was the same thing as love, but the truth was, his arrogance only made me calmer. Just then, Willow leaned over, her voice sweet, oblivious. "What are you looking at so intently?" I pressed the screen off, slipped the phone into my pocket, and shook my head lightly. Nothing. She didn't sense the cold detachment beneath my calm. She just smiled and linked her arm through mine, holding on tighter, as if closeness could erase what she'd done. The tighter she held, the stronger my urge to escape became, but I didn't pull away. I simply closed my eyes and pretended to nap. As long as she believed I was still blind to the truth, perfect. The wedding day would be that much more spectacular. In the days that followed, She was rarely home, gone from morning till night, always with the same excuse, urgent work meetings. I didn't ask questions. Makoto, on the other hand, was relentless, a desperate clown trying to provoke a reaction, flooding my inbox with updates, photos, messages, taunts. Makoto, she's been with me these past few days. Still think she's working overtime. Makoto, we went shopping for baby clothes. She's already picked out names for the twins. In one photo, she stood in a maternity store, smiling softly as she ran her fingers over a pair of tiny shoes. In another, he was bent over, pretending to listen to her stomach, his cheek pressed to her belly, both of them laughing. Makoto, what do you think, George? On the wedding day, do you think she'll run away? She's going to be the mother of my children. After all, Makoto, when she walks down that aisle, it won't be toward you, it'll be toward me. Message after message, every word a dagger meant to pierce, but I didn't reply, not once, because, for once, he was right about something. There would be someone running away on the wedding day, but it wouldn't be Willow, it would be me. Chapter 8. The days Willow was away turned out to be the most relaxing ones I'd had in a long time. Alone, I quietly sorted through everything in the house that belonged to me, packed it all up, and moved it to the small apartment I had prepared in advance, a place known to no one, a place that would finally be mine. The 300-square-meter house, once crammed with traces of our 5 shared years, was now half empty. Even the echoes had become sharper. On the night before our wedding, I was packing the last box. I didn't expect her to come back. She stood at the doorway, holding a photo in her hand, her face wearing that habitual smile. Her eyes swept across the empty living room, and she froze for a moment. You've made the house look like you're moving out, she said. Why do you look so messy? I paused, casually brushed the dust off my face, and replied evenly, just clearing out some clutter. After the wedding, we can bring in new things. She clearly misunderstood, thinking I was preparing for our new life together, not realizing I was preparing to leave her for good. She stepped closer and handed me the photo. I had this one restored. It's our first picture together after we started dating. Do you remember it? Of course I remembered. It was spring, when the pear blossoms had just bloomed. I had just agreed to be with her, and Willow dragged me to a photo studio to take that picture. In the photo, I was smiling like a boy touched by spring itself, and she was looking up at me, eyes filled with light, but the original had long been destroyed, ripped to pieces by Makoto's dog. He had laughed when he mentioned it to me, saying Willow didn't even get mad. She just patted the dog's head and said, "It's okay." That photo needed to be replaced anyway. I pretended not to hear it, but every word had carved itself into my memory. Now she was back with this restored version, as if offering it to me as a gift of reconciliation. Unfortunately, photos can be repaired, feelings cannot. I stared at the photo for a moment before saying softly, "I feel like eating your noodles again." She blinked, then her eyes lit up. "You mean my beef sauce hand-pulled noodles?" "Yeah," I nodded. "Let's have dinner together." It was one of my most humiliating memories. When she first rescued me, I was starving, devouring noodles like a stray dog. She sat quietly across from me, watching as I finished 3 bowls without saying a word. The next day, she went to a small restaurant and secretly learned how to make them, spent a month just to recreate that flavor for me. That was the first time I ever mistook pity for love. Maybe this meal could serve as the final period at the end of our twisted relationship. She agreed immediately, smiling like a child finally granted her long-awaited wish. But when the 2 steaming bowls of noodles were placed on the table, her phone rang. I knew exactly who it was. Her relaxed face turned stiff. After hanging up, she looked at me, guilt and hesitation clouding her eyes. "George, there's an emergency at work." I lifted my head and looked at her. Didn't call her out on the lie. Didn't expose her. I simply smiled, stirred the noodles in my bowl, and said, "It's fine. Work's important. Go ahead. There'll be plenty of time later." She seemed startled, confused by how calm I sounded. Then she stepped forward and hugged me lightly. "Thank you for understanding, George. George, I might be busy until late tonight. You don't have to wait for me. I'm really looking forward to the wedding tomorrow." She said it while holding me, her eyes brimming with happiness she couldn't hide, buried in her arms. I mumbled back, "I'm looking forward to it too." Looking forward to seeing her face when she realized the groom had changed. She would be so surprised. Not long after she left, my phone buzzed. It was Makoto. "George, she's spending the night before your wedding with me. What makes you think you can compete with me? Do you really believe you can win?" He sounded triumphant, flooding my screen with words sharp enough to sting. I didn't reply. I just turned off the screen. The bowl of noodles on the table looked perfect. Color, aroma, everything just right, yet I had no appetite at all. Turns out, not only feelings can change, even a person's habits and tastes can shift without effort. I picked up the photo she had brought back the night before and tore it in half with my fingers, right between the 2 of us. Only her smiling half remained. That was the truest ending. I went to the bathroom, took a long hot bath, and let the silence sink into me. Not long after, I fell into a deep sleep, the best I'd had in years. The next morning, before 7, I woke up on time. 2 notifications glowed on my phone screen, one reminding me of the train departure time, and another showing the delivery in transit. It was the diamond ring I had handed to the courier yesterday. The couple's ring set would soon arrive, right at the wedding venue. Into the hands of the groom, Makoto. My mood was unexpectedly calm. I packed the last bit of luggage, left that place behind, and didn't look back once. That spacious, 300 square meter house had once been what I called home. Now, it was nothing more than the shell of a lie. At the same time, Willow woke up in Makoto's bed. I didn't need to imagine it. She would hurry back, heart still fluttering with happiness, and send me a message. George, I can't wait to see you right now. And I would reply, me too. I hope you like the surprise I prepared for you when the wedding begins. The wedding hall was crowded with guests. Willow stood on stage, beaming with joy, recounting our story, how we grew up together, how we supported each other through the years. She smiled, eyes shining with affection. Soft, romantic music began to play. Balloons floated upward as the groom, under everyone's gaze, walked toward her. George, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I'm willing to spend the rest of my life proving my love to you, cherishing you forever. Will you stay with me, from this day on, for a lifetime? The crowd held its breath. The groom nodded firmly. In the dim lighting, she finally saw clearly. The man walking toward her was not me. Her smile froze in place. Even across the crowd, I could almost see her body shudder. Fear rippling through her like a shadow. And I was already on a train to another city, watching it all unfold from a distance. Eyes cold, heart quiet. This wedding was my final gift to her. Willow, the surprise you've been waiting for has arrived. Chapter 9. Willow's shock twisted into fury. She grabbed Makoto's wrist, her voice shaking with disbelief and anger. How come you're here? Where's George? Makoto winced, trying to pull his hand free, feigning confusion. Willow, what are you talking about? We've already gotten our marriage certificate. Of course the groom should be me. Everyone's watching. You should stop making a scene. But Willow didn't seem to hear his deliberate reminder. Her gaze was fixed on the wedding ring on Makoto's left hand. The ring that once belonged to George was now sitting on Makoto's finger. Willow seized his hand and forcefully pulled the ring off. George's hands had been slimmer. Wearing his ring for even this short while had already left a deep red mark on Makoto's finger. The guests, business elites and political figures from all over J-City, whispered among themselves as they watched the scene unfold. Mrs. Liu received a subtle glance from Mr. Liu and hurried toward Willow. Willow, calm down first. Whatever's going on, let's talk about it after the ceremony. Everyone around tried to calm her down, but Willow felt like she was about to lose her mind. Her heart raced, her body trembling uncontrollably. Then, she noticed the huge LED screen behind her. The slideshow wasn't showing her wedding photos with George, but with Makoto. Those pictures, she remembered now. They were taken after she'd agreed to get the marriage certificate with Makoto, photos he had begged her to take. One photo after another flashed before her eyes. And suddenly, George's last message replayed in her mind. I hope you like the surprise I prepared for you when the wedding begins. Willow's heart lurched violently. The taut string inside her finally snapped. George's words and the scene before her merged into one horrifying realization. Now she understood what kind of surprise he meant. Makoto stepped closer, carefully taking her trembling hand. His tone syrupy and submissive. Willow, George ran away from the wedding. But you still have me, and our baby. Let's just finish the ceremony first. Get out. Willow's composure shattered. She screamed, cutting him off mid-sentence. The next second, her raised hand came crashing down on his face with a loud crack. Makoto's head spun from the force. A red, swollen handprint bloomed across his cheek almost instantly. What nonsense are you spouting? George and I love each other. He'd never run away without a reason. Did you say something to him? And who do you think you are? This is our wedding, mine and George's. Even if he didn't come, you have no right to stand here. Makoto's ears rang. Willow's words blurred into a distant buzz. The slap had been so hard his vision swam. He stumbled backward, lost his footing, and fell from the nearly 1-meter-high stage. A sharp crack followed by his scream. His calf bone had snapped. My leg. Chaos erupted across the venue. Guests panicked. Staff rushed in, but Willow couldn't focus on any of it. Her thoughts spun in agony. Makoto had said George ran away. She refused to believe it. Amid the confusion, she turned and ran, against the flow of people, bolting out of the wedding hall and into her car. George, you're just joking with me, right? You must be at home waiting for me. The groom can't be anyone else, it has to be you. A trip that should have taken an hour took her only 30 minutes. But when she flung open the door, all she found was an empty house. Nothing else. Just silence and absence. Chapter 10. Willow rushed through every room, searching desperately. She opened every door, tore through every corner, but George was nowhere to be found. George, George, please don't joke with me. Okay, we still have to hold our wedding. She called his name over and over, each unanswered echo chipping away at her hope until none remained. She had already noticed earlier, all of George's belongings were gone. The couple's matching items, the framed photos on the walls, the anniversary gifts they'd exchanged. Every trace of his existence in this house vanished. She should have realized it last night, when she came home and sent something off, but she ignored it. On the dining table, the 2 bowls of noodles she'd cooked the night before still sat untouched, and the first official photo they'd ever taken together, now torn in half, lay carelessly discarded beside them. Only her half remained. Willow felt as though her own heart had been ripped apart just like that photo, raw, bleeding, and beyond repair. At that moment, she finally understood, George was truly gone. But why? No matter how hard she tried to think, she couldn't figure out what had made George leave so suddenly. Her phone rang. Willow's hands trembled so badly she could barely hold it steady. When she finally managed to grab the phone, her heart lifted, only to crash again when she saw the name on the screen. It wasn't George, it was Mrs. Liu. Her breath hitched, the emotional whiplash left her dizzy, and a sharp cramp twisted through her stomach. As soon as she answered, Mrs. Liu's angry voice exploded through the speaker. Willow, is it true what Makoto said, that you're pregnant? And when did you two even get a marriage certificate without telling us? Willow, how could you be so foolish? It's one thing to play around, but to get pregnant with Makoto's child and still want to marry George, what were you thinking? Have you found George yet? Willow's voice was completely hoarse from screaming earlier. When she finally managed to speak, her tone was lifeless. George is gone. Mrs. Liu's voice carried through the line, sharp with both anger and disappointment. He's the kind of man who can't stand even a grain of sand in his eye. No wonder he insisted I give him the jade pendant only on the wedding day. He must have discovered what happened between you and Makoto. Mrs. Liu continued speaking, but Willow couldn't hear another word. Her mind echoed with just one sentence. He must have discovered what happened between you and Makoto. Then, a memory surfaced, George's warning on the day he agreed to be with her. Willow, I can only accept love that holds nothing back. If you stop loving me, we can part peacefully, but if you betray me, I'll make sure you never find me again. Mrs. Liu's speculation and George's words looped endlessly in her mind, torturing her until she felt like she was losing her grip on reality. George left because he had found out about her and Makoto. As she forced herself to think clearly, the truth began to unravel before her eyes. Her affair with Makoto had been full of cracks and clues. George must have seen through her betrayal. That's why his behavior had become increasingly distant, increasingly strange. But during that time, she had been too focused on Makoto, so much that even when she noticed George's subtle change, she brushed it aside. Now she realized, everything had been warning her. She just refused to see it, foolishly believing she was still in control. Chapter 11. Willow's chest ached with a dull, unrelenting pain, the weight of guilt threatening to crush her. But no matter what, she had to find George. Between them, the story couldn't end, not until she said it was over. Forcing herself to focus, Willow redialed George's number, but again and again, every call went unanswered. Then she opened WeChat, scrolled to his pinned chat, and sent a message, only to see that sharp, cruel red exclamation mark appear. George had blocked her everywhere. She stared blankly at her phone, on the verge of losing her mind. Even if he left, where could he possibly go? George's father had remarried years ago after his mother's death, and his stepmother had once even schemed against him. After being rescued, his relationship with his father had turned ice cold. He would never go back there. Willow spent a long time searching before she managed to find contact information for George's old friends. But everyone she called responded with the same startled question. Isn't today your wedding? How could he possibly be here? Each time, her fragile hope crumbled a little more. Despair swallowed her whole, until finally, she called George's closest friend, David. The moment he heard Willow's voice and her reason for calling, he gave a short, derisive laugh. Looking for George? Willow, stop dreaming. A cheating woman like you doesn't deserve to see him again. You don't even have the right to know where he went. Willow ignored his insults. Hope flared weakly inside her again as she clutched the phone, speaking fast, desperate. You do know where he is, don't you? Tell me, please. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. I can pay you. Before she could finish, David spat out a sharp TCH. So you think a bit of money makes you special? Your cash means nothing to me, Willow. Even a dog would shake its head at your so-called remorse. Willow didn't even realize the call had ended. She kept speaking into the void, voice breaking with sobs. I really know I was wrong. Please, I'm begging you, tell me where George is. When she finally noticed the line was dead, she tried calling again, only to find she'd been blocked. Willow let out a hoarse scream and pounded her fists against the floor until her skin split open. blood smearing across the cold tiles. But she didn't seem to feel the pain. She just kept hitting, again and again, as if punishing herself could undo what she'd done. She didn't know how much time had passed when the front door opened again. After half a day of repeated heartbreak, a flicker of impossible hope still sparked in her chest. Maybe it was George. But when she looked up and saw Mrs. Lu step inside, the last of her strength collapsed. Her shoulders slumped, her whole body folding in on itself. Mrs. Lu looked at her, this broken, blood-stained mess of a woman, and felt both anger and pity. I warned you again and again to cut things off with Makoto, but you wouldn't listen. And now look at you, tearing yourself apart like this. Willow didn't know how to respond. Back then, she had thought she could balance both George and Makoto, that she could keep her perfect life intact. But she'd forgotten, there's no wall that can hide a secret forever. She regretted it now. Deeply, truly regretted it. She had thought everything was under control, that because she hadn't fallen in love with Makoto, because it was just a game, nothing would go wrong. But she was wrong, terribly wrong. Mrs. Lu's voice went on, relentless. Makoto's leg is broken, and it was because of you. We can't just ignore him now, especially since he's the father of your child. George chose to leave without saying anything. That means there's no going back. You already registered your marriage with Makoto, and you're carrying his baby. Stop looking for George. No. Willow snapped, her voice trembling but fierce. She lunged forward, snatching Mrs. Lu's phone from her hand. I won't give up. He only blocked me, not you. She quickly found George's number in the contacts and dialed. The ringtone dragged on for what felt like forever before the call finally connected. Hello. George's voice. Willow's whole body began to shake violently. Blood from her palms soaked into Mrs. Lu's phone. Her voice came out cracked, trembling, but full of desperate hope. George, it's me. But the moment her voice reached his ears, the line went dead. Chapter 12. Willow, breathing heavily, coughed twice in a dry, raspy way, and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, leaving Mrs. Lu, who was beside her, horrified. George, how cruel you are, Mrs. Lu said. Willow's shoulders trembled. Tears streamed uncontrollably down her face. After a long while, she managed to calm herself down with great effort. Sensing George's firm attitude, Willow realized that no matter how many times she called him again, he would most likely hang up or block her. There was no point in clinging to something like that. Willow thought of the call she had just made to David. David surely knew where George was. Ignoring Mrs. Lu's worried gaze, she called her assistant. Assistant Kim, send someone to follow David. Any news related to George must be reported to me immediately. And also, check all flights and train departures from City J today. If you find any lead, let me know right away. Order after order. Willow didn't allow herself a single moment of rest. Only by keeping herself busy could she stop the pain from consuming her. Mrs. Lu opened her mouth several times, but finally said what she had wanted to say earlier, trying to persuade Willow to let it go. Willow, the world is huge. If George is determined to leave, what can you really do to find him? What happened at the wedding was witnessed by so many people, it's already spread throughout City J. This could affect not only you, even the Lu family could get dragged into it. The best thing now would be for you and Makoto to make a public statement together, with a PR team backing you up. Willow interrupted Mrs. Lu in a tone that left no room for argument. Mom, don't try to convince me. Whatever happens, I have to find George. If he comes back, I'll accept whatever comes my way. But giving up on finding him would be no different from asking to be killed. So, no matter what it took, even if she had to move heaven and earth, she would find George. After saying that, Willow didn't even bother wiping the blood from her hands or the corners of her lips. She left the house straight for the office. The romantic scandals involving her, the ones she had tried so hard to bury, were spreading further and further. But at that moment she couldn't care less. In City J, cars and planes came and went endlessly. Assistant Kim managed to gather the list of all flights and trains that had departed from City J on the day of the wedding. After several days of investigation, Willow discovered that George had bought tickets to more than 10 cities within the country and to 6 foreign countries on that same day. Willow looked at the nearly 20 destinations spread across the table and gave a bitter half-smile. George had truly made up his mind to erase his tracks, but even knowing that, Willow couldn't bring herself to give up on him. She eliminated one wrong location after another, but it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Despair consumed her again. 5 full days had passed since the wedding. She had slept less than 5 hours a night, spending the rest of the time tracking George's whereabouts, all in vain. On the 6th day, while giving instructions to Assistant Kim, exhaustion overcame her and she fainted on the spot. She remained unconscious for 2 days, 1 full day and 1 night, and when she finally woke up, Willow found herself lying in a hospital bed. She pulled out the 4-line to leave, but just as she got up, someone stopped her. Willow, your mother said you haven't rested for days. You should recover before you leave, or I'll be too worried. said a voice. Even for our child's sake, you can't keep being this stubborn. It was then that Willow realized Makoto was also in the room. Makoto's leg was in a cast, and his face showed a worried expression. Willow's face turned cold instantly. She shoved Makoto's hand away forcefully. Get this straight, who do you think you are? You think you have the right to call my mother Mom? Willow spat. Makoto's eyes fell on Willow's barely noticeable baby bump, and his tone revealed a joy he couldn't hide. We're legally married and have a child on the way. Besides, so many people saw us celebrate the wedding. My mother already acknowledged my position. Yesterday we were even picking baby names together. Listen, I like these too. The fragile thread of sanity in Willow's mind snapped in an instant. She grabbed Makoto by the neck with one hand, tightening her grip with every second. Chapter 13. Makoto's face slowly turned from pale to red, then to a purplish blue. Terrified by the icy look in Willow's eyes, he forgot to struggle, and a horrifying thought surfaced in his mind. Willow truly wanted to kill him. Mrs. Liu came in and screamed in shock at the sight. That scream jolted Willow back to her senses. Her grip suddenly loosened, and she lowered her gaze to meet Makoto's eyes, filled only with fear and panic now. Word by word, she interrogated him. On the day of the wedding, why were you the one who showed up? And how did you get George's wedding ring? These past days, Willow's mind had been consumed entirely with searching for George, leaving her no time to think about anything else. Now, seeing Makoto again, question after question burst forth in her mind. Makoto gasped for air, too frightened to hide anything. He recounted everything that had happened after Willow left him that day. Not long after you left, I received a delivery. The package contained that pair of wedding rings. As for everything else, it was the wedding planner who called me and told me to go to the venue. I just thought, if I could take George's place and marry you, that would be enough for me. I didn't think too much about it. Now free, Makoto scrambled away, nearly tripping, and hid behind Mrs. Liu. Willow immediately contacted the head of the wedding planning company. Her sharp gaze locked on Makoto. If I find out you're lying to me, I swear I won't forgive you. A few minutes later, Willow received the answer. Half a month before the wedding, George had already informed the wedding planner that the groom would be changed. The doubts that had haunted her finally had an explanation. But that explanation struck her like a knife to the heart. So George had been preparing to leave her long before the wedding day. Willow collapsed to her knees, unable to comprehend how George could be so cruel, how he could just walk away like that. All those years of love between them, did they really mean so little to him? Yet, if she hadn't first succumbed to Makoto's temptation and betrayed George, he would never have been driven to such a heartless decision. Willow slapped herself hard, once, twice, but the regret gnawing at her only grew stronger. Suddenly, the sound of her phone ringing cut through her despair. It was Assistant Kim's voice coming from the speaker. Director Liu, we've received information about Mr. Wang from Mr. Kim. Willow's eyes lit up instantly. Tell me. The person tracking Mr. Kim managed to take a distant photo of him chatting with Mr. Wang. Based on the background, Mr. Wang should currently be in Lhasa, Tibet. A moment later, a blurry, enlarged photo arrived on Willow's phone. Even though the image was so fuzzy that the face was nearly unrecognizable, Willow knew at a glance it was George. She stared at the photo with an almost obsessive intensity. Book me the earliest flight to Lhasa. I'm going to find George. 3 hours later, Willow boarded a plane bound for Lhasa. After a flight of over 5 hours, the plane landed, and Willow headed straight for the location shown in the photo's background. After asking around, she finally traced her way to the guest house where George had been staying recently. But when she showed the photo to the owner and asked about him, she was told that George had just left, not long ago. Willow froze on the spot, a faint ringing echoing in her ears. No one understood better than she why George had left in such a hurry. He must have found out that she had come looking for him, and that was why he had fled so suddenly. Willow stood inside the room George had stayed in before leaving. The faint trace of his scent still lingered in the air. In the bathroom, she found a brooch George had left behind. She placed it carefully into the pocket over her heart and pressed her hand against it tightly. Inside that same pocket was also a photo of George, one she carried everywhere with her. It was only when she looked at that picture that she could feel a moment of peace. During the time George had been gone, Willow had gone through her phone, found all the photos she had once saved of them together, printed them out, and pasted them on the wall one by one, each in the exact place she remembered. She had also repurchased all the matching couple items and the same clothes George used to wear, every single piece. Only by doing that could Willow convince herself that George hadn't really left her completely. It was as if he had simply gone on a long trip, and maybe, someday, he would come back. Following the same method as before, Willow sent Assistant Kim to the train stations and airports to investigate George's whereabouts. But this wasn't City J, and Assistant Kim was almost mistaken for a suspicious person and detained. In the end, they couldn't find out anything at all. Chapter 14. I returned to City J, or to be precise, I returned to the city that Willow once dreamed of, building a future with me in. Of course, I already knew she had come back too. 2 days ago, she was still in Lhasa, frantically searching for me, and now, she's slunk back to City J, disheveled and defeated. I heard she's at it again, her old tricks, following David, prying into my whereabouts, even digging up people we'd both long lost contact with, trying to cozy up to them again. From afar, I watched her, like a headless fly, crashing into anyone who had ever had anything to do with me. At first, I only observed with cold detachment, but soon, there were more and more reports, and eventually, some people even came directly to ask if Willow and I had had a fight. They said Willow had gone mad, that she was looking for me everywhere. I simply replied, coldly, no comment. I had already given her every chance I could possibly give, but it was as if she never understood human language. The less response she got, the more obsessed, the more desperate she became. In the end, I was utterly exhausted. Did she really think that just because I had blocked her for so long, it meant I was afraid to face her? That day, I finally unblocked her. No greetings, no warnings. I just dumped everything I had straight onto her. The photos of her and Makoto registering their marriage, which I'd taken from her coat pocket, the intimate pictures and honeymoon records stored on her computer, which I had copied while she was taking a shower, the messages Makoto himself had sent to provoke me after she got pregnant, along with those bed photos. I didn't leave out a single one. I sent them all. The phone screen crackled like gunfire, click, 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 and with each message sent, I felt a little lighter. When I finally sent the last one, I let out a long breath, as if all the suffocating weight of the past 2 years had been uprooted and thrown in the trash. Then, I turned off my phone and boarded a flight to Paris. It was a 10-plus-hour journey, an entire night, and I slept better than I ever had before. No nightmares, no memories. When I landed in Paris and turned my phone back on, the screen lit up like an ocean of notifications. I wasn't the least bit surprised. As expected, it was all from Willow. Missed calls, a flood of WeChat messages. I opened our chat, glanced at her first message, and couldn't help but sneer. George, you finally contacted me. You've forgiven me, haven't you? Ha. She hadn't even looked at what I'd sent, and she was already rushing to play the part of the remorseful lover. The rest were long strings of pleas for forgiveness. She said she knew she was wrong, that she'd spend the rest of her life making it up to me, that if I just came back, she'd give up everything. I didn't reply to a single one. Her messages got longer and longer, turning from a few sentences into 1,000-word essays of repentance. But I'm not her teacher, and I'm certainly not her God. I never intended to give her anything like forgiveness. I didn't send those things to make her see how much I was hurting. I sent them to make her understand. I'm not the same George who used to tolerate her, coax her, and forgive her. It's not about how deeply she hurt me. It's that I've completely let her go. She didn't just betray love, she betrayed the last shred of faith I had in her. I only wanted her to know, I'm not crazy, I'm not stupid, and I'm not so blind as to realize too late who she really loved. I already know everything, and no matter what, I will never forgive her. I just hope Willow will finally stop disturbing my life. But clearly, Willow misunderstood, or perhaps pretended not to understand at all. She kept sending message after message, begging for forgiveness. Reading them, all I felt was bitter irony. Back when I gave Willow all my heart, she took it for granted, entangled with Makoto instead. She must have known what would happen when the truth came out. Yet she still indulged herself in Makoto's so-called tenderness, unable to break free. I even gave Willow a chance to confess everything. If she had just told me the truth, we could have ended things peacefully, but she didn't. She chose to keep me in the dark, treating me like a fool. Chapter 15. The clock turned back a dozen hours earlier, when Willow received George's messages. For a moment she thought she was hallucinating. She stared at the screen, frozen for over a minute. Before it finally hit her, she wasn't dreaming. She didn't even open the messages. Her heart was pounding with hope, convincing herself that maybe George had finally forgiven her, that he must have reached out because he wanted to reconcile. But after sending several replies and receiving no response, her initial joy slowly drained away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of panic. She held her phone tightly, waiting. 1 hour, 2 hours. From sunrise to sunset, she waited, but George never replied. Her phone slipped from her numb hands, crashing onto the floor and shattering into pieces. Willow picked it up, trembling, and finally opened George's messages. The moment she saw what he had sent, her breath caught in her throat. A sharp, indescribable pain pierced her chest, and that pain quickly turned into blazing fury. Ever since the day George had run into her and Makoto coming out of the obstetrics department at the hospital, Makoto had deliberately exposed their secret relationship in front of him. Now, staring at those photos and messages, the very things she had once done for Makoto, Willow realized that Makoto had turned all of it into weapons to stab straight into George's heart. The pain was so intense she could barely breathe. Only now did Willow truly see it clearly, how many terrible things she had done, how deeply she had hurt George. She couldn't imagine how he had endured it all, how he had forced himself to act normal and spend those final 2 weeks with her, carrying all that knowledge inside. If the situation were reversed, if George had done all this with another woman, Willow knew she would have gone insane. Once, she had loved George so deeply. So how had things come to this point? A sudden thought flickered across her mind, turning her gaze ice cold. If Makoto hadn't approached her on purpose, none of this would have happened. She never would have done anything to betray George. Now George was gone, and that man, Makoto, the one truly responsible for all this, how could he still live so comfortably, so shamelessly unbothered? George, I'll make it up to you, no matter who made you suffer. I won't let them go unpunished. Willow whispered those words under her breath and quickly left her home, heading for Makoto's villa. During all this time she'd been frantically searching for George. Makoto had completely slipped from her mind. That road, she had walked it countless times before. On so many nights, when George had already fallen asleep, she would sneak out to see Makoto, but never, not once, had she felt a pain like this. If she had known this would be the outcome, she would never have done anything to betray George. But now it was too late. George was gone. Nothing could undo that. All she could do was take revenge for him. Half an hour later, Willow arrived outside the villa, with several bodyguards following close behind. The lights inside were still on. Willow rang the doorbell, and a housekeeper quickly came to open the door. Director Liu, Mr. Ito is in the shower right now. Before the housekeeper could even finish, Willow strode past her and entered the house. As she reached the turn of the staircase on the second floor, Makoto, wrapped in nothing but a bath towel, stepped out, alerted by the noise. When he saw who it was, his eyes lit up with excitement. He deliberately loosened the towel around his waist, letting it slip slightly downward to reveal his chiseled abs and the faint outline of his Adonis belt. Willow, what brings you here so late? Makoto walked up to her and grabbed her hand, tracing lazy circles on her palm with his fingertips. Willow lowered her gaze to their intertwined hands, and a wave of disgust surged through her. She thought of all those times she hadn't been able to resist temptation, all those moments of weakness when she had let Makoto touch her, and the fury that rose inside her nearly made her want to tear him apart right there. Just as Mrs. Liu had said, Makoto's cheap and manipulative seduction tactics were obvious to anyone with eyes, but back then, her relationship with George had grown dull, monotonous, so dull that she found herself craving something dangerous, something thrilling. So when Makoto began his deliberate pursuit, Willow pretended to waver, and eventually, she gave in. The first time, guilt had consumed her. She didn't even know how to face George afterward. But George trusted her so completely that her shame faded, little by little. Once turned into twice into countless times, until she was completely lost in the affair. And worse still, she had even become pregnant with Makoto's child. Willow's eyes hardened, the light in them turning sharp and cold. She had no intention of playing along with Makoto's flirting. Instead, she glared at him with icy fury. Makoto, I warned you, she said, her voice low and cutting. I told you not to expose our relationship in front of George. Chapter 16. Makoto's cheerful expression froze instantly. The panic flashing in his eyes was plain to see, and in Willow's cold gaze, it looked utterly ridiculous. It was the height of summer, yet goosebumps prickled all over Makoto's skin. He had already experienced firsthand how terrifying Willow could become when it came to George, twice. In fact, that kind of fear was something he never wanted to relive a third time. After all, he was nothing more than a scholarship student sponsored by the Liu family. How could he possibly stand against Willow? Makoto struggled to compose himself, forcing an innocent expression onto his face. He couldn't let Willow find out that he had been the one who sent those messages to George. Thankfully, he had deleted the chat history long ago. Trying to steady his trembling body, he spoke in a calm tone. Willow, what are you talking about? I never contacted George. Whatever happened between us, he must have heard it from someone else. Willow suddenly grabbed Makoto's wrist, yanking his phone out of his hand. She opened his WeChat. There wasn't a single trace of the provocative messages she had already seen. Not even George's name in his contacts list. Makoto forced a composed look, taking his phone back, though his voice quivered uncontrollably as he spoke. See, I told you, there's no way I would ever. Willow's cold laugh cut him off. Without hesitation, she gestured for the bodyguards behind her to restrain him. Makoto, you think I'll believe a few weak excuses from you? If I didn't have proof, do you think I'd bother coming here? She shoved her phone in front of his face, showing the forwarded chat logs that George had sent her. The color drained from Makoto's face. The bodyguards lifted him off the ground. His toes barely grazed the floor, and behind him was the staircase. If they let go, he'd go tumbling down. Makoto's panic turned into desperate pleading. Willow, please, just let me stand. I didn't mean to send those things. I was jealous of George, That's all. I couldn't stand the thought of you marrying someone else, but that's because I love you so much. Please, forgive me just this once. He clung to the guard's arm with his free hand, terrified that Willow would order them to drop him. Willow's eyes were devoid of emotion. She looked at him as if he were already dead. Couldn't you just enjoy everything you'd already gotten? She said icily. But no, you had to get greedy. You wanted to drive George away and take his place. And now you'll end up with nothing. In Makoto's shocked gaze, Willow lifted her hand and pressed it over his, prying his fingers off the guard's arm one by one. George is gone, she whispered coldly. So what right do you have to enjoy any of this? Makoto was trembling so hard his lips shook. The housekeeper, who had opened the door earlier, stood frozen in terror, not daring to move. Noticing her, Makoto shouted desperately, "Call Mrs. Liu, quick." Then he turned back to Willow, his voice breaking into a scream. "Willow, don't forget, you're carrying my child, and your parents already acknowledged me. You can't do this to me." But his threats meant nothing. Willow's grip didn't falter. One by one, his fingers came loose, and then, with a sharp shove, Willow pushed him. Her eyes were cold, expressionless, as she watched Makoto tumble down the stairs. For Makoto, that half-minute of falling felt like an eternity. When he finally hit the ground, his already injured leg twisted unnaturally, and blood trickled down his forehead. He looked up at Willow standing atop the staircase, untouched by chaos, her eyes utterly void of pity. Something inside him snapped. What little reason he had left was consumed by hatred. "Willow, you're pathetic," he spat hoarsely. "George is gone, and you're dumping all the blame on me. But what did I even do wrong? Before I sent him those messages, he already knew about your affair. In the end, it was you who couldn't control yourself. You kept saying you loved George more than your own life. What a joke. No wonder he replaced himself with me at the wedding. It was his way of getting revenge. If you love him that much, then go and confess to him yourself." Chapter 17. Before long, Makoto lost consciousness from excessive blood loss. Willow stood there, watching coldly, without a trace of pity. The only flicker of emotion she showed was a brief flash of shame, when Makoto's words had pierced through to the truth she'd been trying to avoid. She already knew from the messages George had sent her that he'd discovered her affair long before Makoto's taunting ever reached him. But her sin was hers to atone for, and she intended to apologize to George face to face. As for Makoto, the one who had started it all, he didn't deserve to walk away blameless. The housekeeper, trembling, made the call. Within minutes, Mrs. Liu arrived at the villa with an ambulance close behind. Mr. Liu came too. When he stepped inside and saw the blood covering the floor, fury overtook him. He slapped Willow across the face, the sound echoing through the hall. "You wretched girl, haven't you caused enough scandals already? Now you want to kill Makoto too?" Half of Willow's face swelled instantly, but she didn't regret what she'd done, not in the slightest. "He had no right to take George's place," she said coldly. "This is the punishment he deserves for his greed." All she had ever wanted was to bear George's child, no one else's. So she would rid herself of Makoto's baby, as a form of repentance. Seeing her stubborn, delusional expression, both Mr. and Mrs. Liu were so enraged that they nearly fainted. In the end, Mrs. Liu forcibly took Willow with her to the hospital. Before leaving, she sternly warned the housekeeper who had witnessed everything, ordering her to tell no one what she had seen. But the villa district was full of prominent figures from City J, and there was no guarantee that the incident had gone unnoticed. Worse still, the most troublesome part of the night, Makoto, had yet to be dealt with. Any mistake, any leak, could bring a catastrophic blow to the Liu family, which was already walking on thin ice. When Makoto regained consciousness, he broke down, shouting that he would call the police. It took Mrs. Liu a long time to calm him down. Willow, impatient and indifferent, stayed at the hospital for less than half an hour before leaving. Whether Mrs. Liu managed to silence Makoto through threats or bribes, she didn't care. She knew that if her parents discovered what she was about to do next, they would try to stop her. So, after leaving the hospital, Willow went to another clinic, where she scheduled an abortion. When it was over, her face was ghostly pale as she forced herself to walk home. All she wanted now was to find George, to stand before him, confess everything, and tell him how much she missed him. Back in the cold, empty house, everything looked exactly as it had before George left, but his presence was gone. Moving like an automaton, Willow cooked 2 bowls of noodles and placed them exactly where they had sat on their last night together. Then she opened a bottle of wine and sat down across from the empty chair. "George, I made your favorite noodles. I punished Makoto for you today. The baby, it's gone too. But when will you forgive me? When will you come back to me?" Willow's voice trembled, but she kept drinking, bottle after bottle, as though she could drown the pain. She didn't care how much it hurt her body, she just wanted to be numb. Pulling out her shattered phone, she opened her chat with George and scrolled through their old messages, one after another, reliving each word they'd shared. If only nothing had changed. But as she stared at the screen, George's final messages surfaced in her mind again. The photos he'd sent, the ones of her and Makoto, stabbed at her heart all over. How devastated must George have been when he saw them? Her breath hitched, and she clutched her chest, gasping for air. Since George had left, she hadn't had a single night of peaceful sleep, except that one time when exhaustion had made her collapse. No matter how she rearranged the house to look like George had never left, it was still an illusion. Chapter 18. When Willow groggily woke up, it was already evening the next day. The 2 bowls of noodles on the table had long congealed into a sticky lump, and the floor was littered with overturned bottles. It was the height of summer, and the stench of fermented alcohol mixed with spoiled noodles filled the air, suffocating and sour. But Willow seemed completely numb to it all, as if she had become one with the decay around her. Days passed, empty, meaningless, indistinguishable, and still, there was no news about George. Whatever Mrs. Lu had promised Makoto, it worked. The men who had once shouted about calling the police had fallen silent. But in City J, the names of Willow and the Lu family were already ruined beyond repair. Unable to bear it any longer, Mrs. Lu had tried countless times to convince Willow to pull herself together. When every attempt failed, she finally brought a psychiatrist to treat her daughter, but Willow refused to cooperate. The sessions had little to no effect. Once upon a time, Willow had been disciplined, rarely touching cigarettes or alcohol. Now, barely a month after George's departure, she had fallen deep into addiction to both. She was trying to numb herself, to erase the pain, to forget everything, but deep down, she knew it was useless. And yet, what else could she do? George, she murmured hoarsely, you always hated it when I drank or smoked. Why won't you show up and stop me? Then. I miss you so much. Please, please come back to me. Willow kept drinking, one bottle after another. Her body, weak from sleepless nights and intoxication, began to blur the line between reality and illusion. Otherwise, how could George be standing right there in front of her? He walked closer, step by step, until he stopped just a few feet away. Willow, he said with a frown, his voice gentle but reproachful. Why did you drink so much again? If you keep this up, I won't talk to you anymore. The expression on Willow's face changed instantly. The lifeless emptiness in her eyes suddenly lit up, bright and trembling with disbelief. She reached out and pulled the George in front of her into her arms, clutching him tightly. Tears streamed down her face, soaking into the shirt on his chest. She was terrified of holding too tight, afraid she might hurt him, but even more afraid that if she loosened her grip, he'd vanish, just like in all her dreams. So she wrapped her arms around him, refusing to let go, as though he were the most precious thing she'd ever regained. George, it's really you, isn't it? She whispered between sobs. I've been looking for you everywhere. You finally came back to me. The George in her arms stroked her back gently, his tone coaxing, patient. You're exhausted. Come on, rest for a bit. Okay, I'm not going anywhere. Willow obediently stood up, though her hand never let go of his. She led George to the bedroom, clinging to him as though afraid he might dissolve into thin air. It all felt like a beautiful dream, but if George was truly willing to come back to her, then so what if it was a dream? She would rather never wake up. Lying in bed, she held George tightly, unwilling to loosen her arms for even a second. The men shifted uncomfortably in her embrace, but Willow, lost in the haze of alcohol and longing, began to run her hands over him, unable to stop herself. Just as things were about to go too far, a sudden flicker of clarity cut through her drunken haze, and that's when she saw him clearly. The man pressed against her wasn't George. A violent pain surged through her head. She shoved him away and slapped him hard across the face. Who are you? She screamed. Where's George? What did you do to him? He was just here. He was right here. Fueled by alcohol and madness, she didn't realize how much force she had used. The man's face twisted in anger. With a shout, he shoved Willow back, fury blazing in his eyes. Chapter 19. The man wasn't George at all. He was George's half-brother, Domingo. Mrs. Lu had long grown desperate watching Willow waste away, living every day like a ghost, hollow and lifeless ever since George's disappearance. Nothing she tried worked: therapy, persuasion, medication, not even pleading. Then one day, she suddenly remembered something. George had a younger half-brother, 3 years his junior. Back then, after George's mother passed away, Mr. Wang remarried, but his affair had begun long before that, resulting in an illegitimate son, Domingo. When Mrs. Lu saw Domingo's photo, his resemblance to George, 5 parts out of 10, gave her an idea. She made a deal with the Wang family. In exchange for certain benefits, Domingo would get close to Willow, to heal her emotional wounds. But things had gone terribly wrong. Now Domingo stood there, blood trickling down his forehead from the wound he'd gotten when she'd pushed him earlier. He tried to leave, but Willow's grip on his wrist was unyielding. Willow wasn't a fool. The moment her mind cleared and she looked at Domingo, At the faint similarity in his face, it all fell into place. "You're George's brother, aren't you?" she said in a trembling voice. "Call him. I don't care what you have to do, just make him come back. Whatever you want, I can give it to you." Domingo scoffed, rolling his eyes. "What's so great about him? Huh? He's just some bastard without a father or mother." The words had barely left his mouth before Willow's gaze turned ice cold. She stared at him, her tone razor-sharp and deadly. "I won't allow anyone to insult George," she hissed. "Say one more word like that, and I'll kill you." Domingo's mocking smirk faltered under her threat. He reluctantly pulled out his phone and dialed George's number. The line rang for a while before someone finally picked up. A voice, heavy with irritation, spoke from the other end. "Domingo, what do you want? You woke me up." Domingo hesitated for a moment, then said, "Dad. Dad's seriously ill. He wants to see you. You should come home." I froze for a full minute, trying to recall from some dusty corner of my mind the name Domingo. It had been so long since I'd heard it that I'd nearly forgotten. I even had a half-brother, and that so-called father. "I have nothing to do with the Wong family anymore," I said flatly. "Whether he lives or dies, it has nothing to do with me. Don't call me again." I couldn't see Domingo's face, but his mask of politeness dropped completely when he spoke again. His tone dripped with resentment. "No wonder Dad never wanted you. George, you're such a disappointment. First abandoned by your father, now by the Liu family. You really got what you deserved." That sentence cut through the fog of sleep in an instant. My voice turned sharp and cold as a blade. "Willow told you to call me, didn't she?" Though it sounded like a question, I already knew the answer. Domingo gave a low, mocking laugh. "So what if she did? I just can't stand you." Click. I hung up before he could finish. Back in the villa, Willow, already weak from blood loss, barely managed to whisper a few words, her voice faint and trembling. "George, I never meant to abandon you." Then everything went dark. By the time Domingo realized she wasn't moving, panic struck. Terrified of being implicated in her death, he called Mrs. Liu. Thanks to that call, Willow's life was saved, barely. Now, she lay unconscious in the hospital bed. 2 full days had passed. Mrs. Liu waited by her side, anxiety eating away at her heart. "George." She looked up sharply when Willow murmured the name, thinking she was finally waking up, but the doctor gently explained that it was only a reflex, a subconscious response. George's departure had become a shadow lodged deep in Willow's heart, a wound that refused to heal. Staring at her daughter, so frail, so thin she was almost unrecognizable, Mrs. Liu finally broke down. Chapter 20. It was only after declining Liu Auntie's call several times that I finally picked up. The ringtone rang again and again, sharp and jarring in this foreign morning. I had already guessed why she was calling. Who else could it be about, if not Willow? When the 7th call flashed on my screen, I stared at it for 2 seconds, hesitated, and finally slid to answer. "George. Auntie really has no other choice. Please, don't hang up." Her voice on the other end was hoarse and trembling. I could tell she was genuinely crying. I stayed silent for a few seconds, trying to keep my tone steady. "Aunt Liu, what is it?" I no longer wanted to call her Auntie. That word was too intimate. It would only remind me how kind she once was to me, and how she had personally pushed me into hell. She didn't hesitate to bring up Willow. "Willow has been looking for you these days. I know she did wrong, but she truly regrets it. George, can't you give her another chance? Just see her once, even if only once." I looked at the streets of Paris in the early morning. The wind brushed against my fingertips, icy cold. It had been almost 3 months since I left J City. In these 3 months, I had moved from place to place, and finally stayed here. David had brought me news from time to time. Willow hadn't stopped looking for me. Her search had become louder and louder, to the point where I didn't even dare update my social media, afraid she might find me. But deep down, I knew this couldn't go on. This tangled mess between us, it needed an ending. So I said, "I'll return to J City in a week. I'll contact you then." Before she could reply, I hung up. That small concession was enough to drive Willow mad. I could already picture her excitement when she heard the news. Could imagine her thinking I had forgiven her. But what she didn't know was that my return wasn't to give her another chance. It was to give myself one final farewell. An ending. A complete, irreversible ending. Chapter 21. Lou's mother called and said Willow had woken up, that the first thing she said was that she wanted to see me. I stayed silent for a moment, but in the end, I agreed to return to J City. She gave me the meeting place, a greenhouse on the outskirts of town. The moment I heard the address, I knew it was arranged by Willow, but I didn't say anything. I hung up, packed my things, and set off on time. The moment I stepped into the greenhouse, I froze. It was midsummer, yet all around me were blooming pear blossoms. A thick layer of petals covered the ground, and the air was filled with a faint, sweet fragrance. Every step revealed a new, delicate scene, like I had wandered into a fairy tale. Of course, I knew exactly why she had arranged all this. She couldn't forget the spring when we first got together, when the pear trees were in full bloom. She was trying to use that memory to stir up the feelings I once had for her. But I was no longer that George. I didn't let my gaze linger on any of the decorations. Instead, I looked straight ahead, at Willow. She walked toward me, her thin frame barely holding up the suit she wore. For a moment, I was taken aback. 3 months apart, and she truly had changed. Gaunt, pale, her eyes red and swollen, she looked like her soul had been drained away, leaving only a hollow shell. But in my heart, not even the faintest trace of pity stirred. She called out, "George." I stopped walking, keeping a 3-meter distance between us, unwilling to come any closer. "Just say what you came to say," I told her, my tone calm and detached. "But I hope after today, you'll stop disturbing my life." Her eyes flashed with pain, as if my words had slapped her awake, but I didn't soften. She took a shaky breath, lifted her head, and forced a smile. "George, I think about you every single moment. I know you hate me for betraying you, but I've really changed. You hated Makoto. I've cut him off completely. The baby is gone too. I had the rings redesigned, and I planted pear trees again. I want to propose to you once more. George, can we start over?" Her eyes were filled with light, as though she had gathered every last bit of strength just to beg me. "I promise you, from now on, I will never betray you again. If I ever do, may I live out my life in loneliness." She sounded sincere, pitiful, even convincing, but all I felt was irony, a sharp, bitter irony. I looked straight at her and said, my voice steady and cold as stone, "Willow, if I hadn't suddenly disappeared, would you really have cut ties with Makoto on your own?" Chapter 22. Yes, to me, you're the most important person in my life. She said it almost without hesitation, words that, once upon a time, might have softened me, but now, they only made me laugh. A cold smile tugged at the corner of my lips, one so bitter that even I could feel the irony in it. Her eyes changed instantly, as though my laugh had cut straight through her heart. "You wouldn't." I looked up at her, cutting off her self-pity without mercy. "You couldn't let go of me, yet you were addicted to the thrill Makoto gave you. If you had truly been able to move on, how could you have ended up carrying his child, then turned around and lied to me, made me believe it was mine?" As soon as I said it, I saw her body tremble slightly, but I didn't stop. "You're only saying you'd let go now because you finally know I'll never come back. What you regret the most isn't what you did, it's that you didn't hide it better." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "If you could start over, I'd bet anything you'd hide Makoto far, far away, so deep that I'd never find him in my lifetime. That way, you could have it all. You could keep lying, keep pretending." Her face went completely pale. I knew I had hit the part of her heart she least wanted to admit existed. Her lips trembled. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. Then she rasped out, "George, you can't condemn me for something that never happened." She kept shaking her head, denying, arguing, but I no longer had the patience to listen. "Maybe I guessed wrong," I said with a cold laugh, "but the fact remains, you betrayed me. That can't be erased. Willow, after everything you've done to disgust me, what makes you think I could still forgive you like before, as if nothing ever happened?" She could barely stand anymore, her face drained of all color. The ring in her hand slipped and fell with a small clink at my feet. I looked down at it but didn't pick it up. Her eyes burned with resentment. "Then why did you even come back? Aren't you afraid?" She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what she meant. She was afraid I thought she might try to trap me here, and truth be told, she had that power. In this city, her word was law, and I probably shouldn't have come back at all, but in the end, I still did, because I finally understood. Without facing it, I would never truly be free. I looked at her, my voice cold as ice. "Willow, you of all people know what illegal imprisonment means. You don't want that charge on your record, do you? I came back only to put an end to this. Your obsession has already interfered with my life." With that, I turned around. I'd barely taken a few steps when she grabbed my wrist from behind. She didn't say a word, but I knew that look all too well. Pleading, sorrowful, and with a hint of defiance. She was begging me not to walk away completely, but I had no mercy left to give her. Before I could shake her hand off, "Darling, what took you so long?" Anna's voice came from the greenhouse door. I didn't even look to see how she approached, just felt her naturally slip her arm around mine. Willow froze. She stared blankly at me, then at Anna, at our hands clasped tightly together. Her voice trembled. "Who are you?" "Hello," Anna said with a poised smile. "I'm George's girlfriend." "Anna, if you ever get the chance, you're welcome to visit Paris." I said nothing, just walked out side by side with Anna. Behind me, there was no resistance, but after a few steps, I heard a dull thud, and then, the sound of someone coughing up blood. I didn't look back. I just closed my eyes for a moment. That was the choice she made for herself, and for the first time, I no longer had to bear the consequences for her. Chapter 23. Just as Anna and I were about to leave the greenhouse, Lou's mother suddenly appeared in front of us. She stood straight, blocking our path, her eyes scanning me with a complicated expression before turning to Anna. "George, are you leaving already? And this person, is she your friend?" I forced down the wave of emotion rising in my chest and replied evenly, "There's nothing left to say between Willow and me. Also, this is my girlfriend, Anna." Anna greeted her politely, her voice soft and respectful. "Hello, Aunt Lou." But Lou's mother didn't seem interested in returning the courtesy. Her gaze dropped to our interlocked hands, and her tone sharpened with reproach. "George, you and Willow have been apart for less than 3 months, and you're already—" She trailed off, but I knew exactly what she meant. "Can't you see how much she suffered for you? She went through an abortion because of you. She hurt her body. You came back to see her, so why can't you give her another chance?" With every word she spoke, the exhaustion inside me built up layer by layer. I understood her position, understood her pity for Willow, but the more she defended her, the clearer my mind became. "Aunt Lou," I said quietly, my tone low but edged with cold steel, "Willow's suffering has nothing to do with me. The child she carried wasn't mine. She could have chosen to keep it. Every bit of pain she's endured was brought on by her own actions." I paused, then continued. "I agreed to come back and see her because you were once kind to me, but that doesn't mean I owe her anything. Willow could betray me right before our wedding, but now that I'm in a relationship after our breakup, I'm supposed to ask for your permission. Why? What gives her that right? And one more thing," I said, meeting her dimmed gaze. "Aunt Lou, you knew about her affair before I did, yet you chose to help her hide it. I'm not here to judge your decisions, nor will I say whether you were right or wrong, but you have no right to ask for my forgiveness." Lou's mother's face went pale with anger. I hadn't meant to provoke her, but these words had been held inside me for far too long. Just then, I saw Willow appear at the doorway, her face as white as paper, weakly bracing herself against the wall. Lou's mother immediately turned and rushed to her, calling her name in panic. I didn't stop. I turned around, took Anna's hand, and walked away from that place that no longer belonged to me. This time, I truly left. From that moment on, there was nothing left between Willow and me. During our short stay in J City, I took Anna around. It was her first time here, and for me, this was once the city where I thought I'd spend the rest of my life. I took her to eat at the old beef noodle shop I'd loved as a kid, walked with her by the riverside, and met up with David. We promised that someday, when he felt ready, he'd come visit us in Paris. And then, Anna and I left J City together. The moment the plane touched down in Paris, I finally exhaled. For the first time in a long while, it was a genuine sigh of relief. I had met Anna the first time I came to Paris. That day, I'd just landed, exhausted, disoriented, and nearly scammed by an agent while looking for an apartment. It was Anna who stepped in, helped me out of the situation, and brought me to a safe listing through one of her friends. After that, we occasionally had meals together, chatted a bit, and gradually grew close. She once told me I was quiet, like the kind of comic book hero she had loved as a child. I smiled at that but didn't respond, until one day, she told me seriously that she liked me, and I didn't refuse. It wasn't out of impulse, nor was she a replacement. I knew exactly what I was doing. I no longer loved Willow. From the moment I sat alone at our wedding venue and saw the marriage certificate with her in another man's name, whatever love I had left for her had completely burned out. If anyone thinks accepting a new relationship less than 3 months after a breakup makes me cold-hearted, so be it. I won't explain myself. As Anna once said, running away only lets the pain haunt you over and over again. Only by facing it can you truly let it go. I wasn't running anymore, and I no longer believed in that phrase, "You're the only one for me." People change. Hearts change. I once believed in Willow's love. Now, I choose to believe in Anna's. If what I had with Willow was like a moth flying into the flame, then what I share with Anna is more like a gentle spring rain, quiet, warm, and unintrusive, yet sinking deep into the heart. And that is enough. Chapter 24. After returning from J City to Paris, my life finally regained its peace. No more calls from Willow. No more so-called friends, people who were really on her side, trying to persuade me to forgive her. My WeChat was no longer buried under endless unread messages, and even my dreams had become clearer, lighter than before. I woke up on time every day, went to work, ate meals with Anna, sometimes took walks, visited galleries. My days were simple and clean. That was the kind of life I'd always wanted. As for everything about Willow, I had already closed that door, and I would never look back, but I knew deep down that she wouldn't truly let go. According to what David later told me privately, Willow had been in terrible shape after I left. It was as if she'd lost her soul, numb, thin, and sunken into deep depression. She stopped attending public events and refused to deal with company affairs. She had turned herself into a lifeless shell of a person. Lou's mother, I heard, had become irritable and hysterical. That once elegant, graceful, self-controlled lady had transformed into someone unrecognizable, cursing the heavens, cursing George for being ungrateful, cursing Makoto as a shameless dog, and most of all, cursing Willow for being pathetic. And Lou's father, he, too, was pushed to the edge of collapse. One day, David sent me a short audio clip. It wasn't long, but I recognized the sound immediately, the slam of a hospital door, followed by Lou's father's furious voice. "Willow, look at yourself, what have you become?" Then came the sound of his hand striking her, a muffled slap. I wasn't surprised. Lou's father was a man obsessed with control, a stickler for family honor and discipline. Willow, in her current state, had clearly crossed his bottom line. "You think acting like this will make George come back? You're not even worthy of a second glance from him. Do you know how many people are laughing at our family?" His shouting echoed through the room, even through the recording. It sent a chill straight through me. "Look at your mother. Look what you've done to her. Have you forgotten what she used to be? She doesn't even put on makeup anymore, doesn't even bother to brush her hair. Everyone in J City knows the Lou family is a disgrace now." I stopped the recording there. I couldn't bear to listen further, and truthfully, I didn't want to. I'm no saint. I don't have compassion to spare for those who once tore me apart. Whatever Willow was suffering now, it still wasn't even 1,000th of what I went through back then. I won't deny that when I first heard she'd gone gray overnight, that her father had slapped her, there was a heaviness in my chest, but that feeling came only from a basic, human sense of empathy, not softness, not pity, and certainly not love. What truly froze my heart was the simple truth. Everything that happened to her, she chose it. She made those choices, clear-headedly. She weighed her options and still decided to go on. She had chances to stop, but she didn't. The moment she betrayed me, she gambled, and lost everything. So no, she shouldn't hate me for being cold, and she shouldn't expect me to turn back. I am not the man in her story who waits forever. Later, I heard that Willow eventually accepted treatment. Once her health recovered a bit, she returned to work. Her business acumen, I'll admit, was formidable. If she hadn't been such a threat to others, those people wouldn't have ganged up on her when she was at her weakest. When she came back, she struck back hard, taking down one powerful family after another. Several companies went bankrupt, losing everything. Eventually, those same people had to bow their heads, offering apologies and money just to make her stop. The Lou family's reputation, it seemed, could finally lift its head again. I don't know if her parents ever believed, even for a moment, that she'd moved on. But when they tried to arrange a blind date and she exploded in rage, I think they finally understood. She hadn't healed at all. She'd only buried her pain deep inside. She spoke to no one. Aside from work, she lived in complete solitude. Every night, she went home and lay on the same bed I once slept in. She had once said, "If I ever betray you, I'll grow old alone." It seems, she still remembers. The Lou family's business had expanded overseas, and their first stop was Paris. When someone first mentioned it to me, I didn't pay much attention. Not until one day, when I wandered into a newly opened Chinese restaurant, and tasted a bowl of noodles that felt painfully familiar. That flavor was exactly the same, and in that instant, I knew it was her. I didn't go into the kitchen to look for her. I simply lowered my head, finished the bowl quietly, and left. Later, I figured she must have seen me. Because after that day, I never went back to that restaurant again, and she never came to find me, either. But I knew she was close by. I could feel it. She was there, somewhere within reach. Yet she never showed herself. A few times, when I passed through that street again, I'd occasionally catch a glimpse of her from afar, crouched beside the flower bed at the restaurant entrance. Her movements stiff as she pruned the branches of a pear tree. Yes, snow pear trees, the kind I liked best. She knew that my throat tended to get hoarse in autumn. So one year she had someone pick a few fruits and send them to my home. I returned them untouched. Later, my housekeeper came back and told me she had heard the news that I was getting married, and sometime after that, she appeared at my wedding. Not up close, but hidden among the crowd. I could feel her there. When I finished reciting my vows, I heard a faint, stifled sob from somewhere in the back. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I knew it was her. Time passed. One day, as I was pushing Anna, heavily pregnant now, on a walk, we passed by that restaurant again. She was still there, sitting quietly in the courtyard, her back turned to us, pale against the pear tree as she stared into nothing. She didn't greet me, and I didn't look back. I knew she couldn't have children anymore. I'd heard that she'd adopted a child back in China, a little boy said to look somewhat like me. They also said she often traveled between J City and Paris. That her health grew worse each year, but she was still alive. Still guarding that courtyard, those pear trees, and that little restaurant. Sometimes, I can't help but wonder, if she hadn't done what she did back then, Would we still be together now? But it's only a fleeting thought, because the woman she once was had already vanished on the night before our wedding, and the man I am now has long since reclaimed his own future. She no longer belongs to my world,